Hi folks, welcome back to Stacey Can. Today I am canning some tomatoes. I'm going to do these quartered. Just a little brief description on tomatoes. You can can them halved, whole, halved, quartered, and also crushed. If you're going to do them crushed, you have to do it a little bit differently, and there's a different recipe for that, or different recipes for that. So I'm just using the quartered recipe simply because that's how I use canned tomatoes. That's what I look for when I shop. So that's why I'm doing it this way. Maybe you use a lot of whole tomatoes. You can modify this recipe to do it those three ways, or half recipes. So this recipe I got from the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving 400 Delicious and Creative Recipes for today. Enjoy these cookbooks a lot. So to kind of go over a little bit of what type and how much of tomatoes. These tomatoes I have, they're Roma tomatoes, are considered a paste tomato. You can also use a plum tomato. They're often more of the elongated tomatoes, not the rounder ones. The rounder ones are a little bit more, they're for slicing. Those are considered slicing tomatoes. Those are also good ones to use for it, but it's definitely best to use the same type of tomato when you're canning your tomatoes, because the juice content is different. Paste tomatoes are a little bit thicker, they have fewer seeds, and they don't have as much liquid and water in them or juice in them as your regular slicing round tomatoes do. So keep that in mind as you are shopping. The other thing, as far as the amount goes, you're going to need around 22 pounds for 7 quarts or 14 pounds for 9 pints. I'm doing pints today. That's just works better for me. You're also going to need an acid of some sort. Tomatoes used to be considered a high acid food. They are no longer that since 1995, I believe. They were retested, and to be low acid foods are 4.6 on the pH scale and above. High acid foods are 4.6 and below, obviously. These measured out to be 4.5, so it's just enough on that scale of tipping over into needing to add an acid of some sort to your tomatoes. For me, I'm using lemon juice, bottled lemon juice. You have to use that over regular whole lemons. The consistency and the pH changes so much from lemon to lemon, so it's best to have it bottled for consistent acid consistency. And you can also use a citric acid or like vitamin C pills. You can crunch those up and use those. So this is what I'm using. And sometimes you can also use vinegar, which is kind of a lot. So that's a decent go-to. But if you end up using vinegar, or even sometimes with this acid, sometimes it can maybe make the flavor a little bit different. Well, if that's the case, you can add a little bit of sugar for that. I think like maybe a teaspoon of sugar just to kind of offset for the pints, to offset the acid flavor. So that is fine, that acidy taste. So, also salt. I am using salt in my tomatoes. You don't have to. I'm going to be using a little, and I'm going to go ahead and just use pickling salt for that. And you're also going to need some hot water. We are raw packing these today just because I prefer to raw pack over hot pack. And so that's the information we need for that. Oh, also just a quick thing. Another little information on the tomatoes. A bushel weighs 53 pounds and yields 17 to 20 quarts of crushed tomatoes, so keep that in mind. And so you need around an average, this says according to the National Center for Home Food Preservation, that's just the information where I got that, you need an average of 2 3/4 pounds per quart. Now that is for crushed tomatoes. So you need, I guess, just as a wag, meaning wild ass guess, if you don't know what that is around maybe just over 2 pounds of tomatoes per quart. And remember, make sure that they are the same type of tomato as you move forward. These are great for sauces. The paste and plum tomatoes, they're good for sauces and that kind of thing because they're thicker, they're meatier, etc. But if you're going to be juicing tomatoes, using the slicing tomatoes is probably better because you're going to get more juice out of them. So the tools we will need is your standard. We're going to need a small stock pot because we have to peel the skins off. So we're going to need a small stock pot to boil some water to put the skins in. You're gonna need a paring knife to score the tomatoes. I'll show you how to do that, as well as a regular knife to kind of cut them up. If you're choosing to cut them up, if you want to do them whole, you don't have to cut them up. And then you need a bowl of ice water. So you also need, because we're gonna be scooping them out of the pot here and putting them into the cold water after the skin starts to peel. So you need something a slotted spoon works really well to scoop the tomatoes out as you go. You also need your funnel, your ladle to pour into the jars. You need your Headspace tool, lid lifter. I am heating the jars today, or the lids today, as well as your jar lifter, and don't have it with me, but I will, a chopstick, because we will be bubbling. Definitely need to bubble. If you want to have a ruler to help measure out that you have at least 1 inch of water over the top of the canner, you can use that. Or also you can just use the Headspace tool because it's 1 inch, and that gives you an idea. I can't eyeball that well. You can also use a thermometer to make sure that that the canner itself is around 180 degrees when you're putting your hot stuff into the warm canner. So those are the things that we need. So with all of that, let's go ahead and get started. Got a little pot of water going here that's boiling, and I've rinsed off my tomatoes. To properly peel them, you want to just you want to score them at the end. So you just put a little X, just quick, little boop boop, and then place them carefully into the water here. I normally do about 3 at a time. And you kind of watch, and you do want the pot to be relatively full, and you want to watch for the skins to start to peel. And it normally takes 30 seconds to a minute. Oh, there it is. So see, when it does something like that, when you get a nice little peel, little split there in the skin, take it out and stick it in your ice water. Nope, I got another one here. And let's see if we can get another one. Yep, it did it here too. So see that split in the skin there? That's bigger than what the score I did, the little XX. So you want to put them in the water here, and then you peel off, you just gently pull the skins off like so. It's really simple to do. And that's it. Put them on your cutting board and just keep going until you've got your tomatoes peeled. So I'm taking the jar out of the canner. I have been heating the jars in there. We're gonna go ahead and add the 1/2 teaspoon of salt. That's optional, but the acid is not. So this is where you would add in I'm adding lemon juice, or your ascorbic or citric acid, and then we're going to go ahead and you can put in a little bit of sugar if you wanted to offset the flavor, just like a teaspoon, I believe. I just double check that. There's other recipes out there for that information. And then we're just raw packing these after I've cut around the core, and then you just kind of quarter them like so, and throw them into the jar. So we're filling it to 1/2 inch Headspace. They really want you the instructions say a generous 1/2 inch Headspace. So I'm just filling it to there at the moment, just kind of basically almost giving it 1 inch of a Headspace with the water here, the boiling water that I've had, because we're gonna go ahead and make sure you bubble. You wanna bubble very well. You can also use tomato juice if you wanted to use, instead of using water. I'm just using water. And I'm gonna go ahead and add just a couple more pieces here, because it looks like I'm gonna add just another piece there, because I think we can get that up to a 1/2 inch Headspace with just that. Yep, I'm doing pretty good. So cleaning the rim really, really well. Got my lid lifter. Ring, we're just doing fingertip tight. That's about it. And then just gently pick it up and over, don't tip or tilt, and into the canner. I got all the jars on the rack here, so we're gonna carefully just lower it down. Then we go ahead and use the Headspace tool to make sure that we have over 1 inch of water in the canner, and I do. Yep, have over 1 inch of water. And I'm gonna go ahead and put the lid on, and I've got the temperature up to high. So when this comes to a rolling boil, then we'll go ahead and set the timer for 40 minutes. I have a rolling boil going, so I've set the timer for 40 minutes for my altitude, which is from 0 to 1,000 feet. 1,001 to 3,000 feet, it's 45 minutes. From 3,001 feet to 6,000 feet, it is 50 minutes, and then anything above 6,000 feet, your timer would be for 55 minutes. So I also have it listed down below in the show notes to make sure that you are adjusting and processing according to your altitude. The 40-minute timer has gone off, so I'm going to cut the heat. So turn your burner off, or just cut the heat completely. And I'm going to go ahead and remove the lid. And we'll set the timer for 5 minutes to let these jars settle in the canner so the food can settle as well as the jars. 5-minute timer went off, so I'm going to go ahead and lift the rack out. So just be very, very careful. And I like to take them out kind of like first one in, first one out type of a deal, but it doesn't matter. They've got a great color, but they did float a little more than what I'd like. So I think the next time I would probably cram a few more in there, because that's how I roll. And this is how we can some tomatoes. Check out the show notes down below for the recipe, and also please like and subscribe the page. It does help. And if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, feedback, concerns, by all means, please reach out to me. I'm on Facebook at Stacey Can Can. You can at me on Instagram and TikTok at Stacey Can Can. My website is www.staceycancan.com, and my email is info@staceycancan.com. Thanks again so much for joining me, and until next time, happy canning.